Hey guys, what is up? It is Sabrina here and welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, I am a Westminster Theological Seminary student and I create content that helps Christian homemakers build productive and peaceful homes. And I also have a whole series on my channel about pumping breast milk, all things exclusively pumping, a bunch of just different topics on that. So if you guys are interested in this type of content, check out that playlist because there's a lot more that I have on there and that I plan to film in the future. Today we are going to be talking about an all-comprehensive beginner's guide on how to pump breast milk. So if you guys are new to the whole realm of pumping, it can be kind of overwhelming, especially if you are an exclusive pumper. Today, I'm going to be talking specifically about exclusively pumping, but there's still going to be a lot in this video that can help you, whether you nurse and add a little bit of pumping into your routine or you exclusively pump. Whatever you do, hopefully this video can be helpful for you. I'm going to be talking about milk supply, storing milk, schedule, essentials and products that I use and that help me, how to use a pump. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is supplies, what you're going to need to pump breast milk. Now, I have an entire video that I specifically mention all of the products that I use, and I highly recommend you guys go watch that because I am not going to be showing all of those products in this one video. It would just take so long. I'm just going to be talking about the bare minimum essentials that I think you need when you pump, but that video has a lot of extra just little things that make it easier. I'm linking it down below, but today I'm just going to be talking about a couple of the just bare minimum essentials that you're going to need to get started. So the first thing is obviously a pump, a breast pump of some kind. Now, I have the Spectra pump, and this is a Spectra S1 pump. Highly recommend. Honestly, this is my favorite pump ever. I've tried Medela, I've tried Mom Cozy, I've tried a couple different brands, and this is just my favorite one. It just mimics the way that a baby feeds so well. I mean, obviously not exactly because it's a breast pump, but it is really good for milk stimulation. It effectively empties me out every time. I never have to massage or do anything to get the milk flowing because this is so good. It's a very popular one and you can get it on Amazon. Also have another breast pump from the brand Mom Cozy, and this one is a wearable breast pump. It is completely unassembled right now, so maybe I'll just include a picture of what it looks like. A portable, wearable breast pump, great for on the go because this is how tiny the motor is, and then these are like the cups that attach to these wires and go in your bra, so it's really nice. But basically, you don't need a wearable pump. You only need one really good pump, and I honestly recommend the Spectra. I would never use a wearable pump as my main pump just because the way that it presses against your breast is not going to get that milk flowing out as good as a regular pump is, and they're okay to use in supplementation of a regular pump like this. This one is not assembled. I have all my wires out because I'm actually weaned, so everything is in storage now. But I do want to include some like clips or videos or whatever in this video so you can see what it looks like if you are completely new to this. If you want to add wearable pumps in, you definitely can, but don't make your wearable pump your main pump. That's all I gotta say. If you care about protecting your supply, don't make it your main pump. You can definitely use it with your big pump throughout the day when you're busy, when you're on the go. The next thing you're going to need is baby bottles, obviously, to feed your baby the milk you pump. So I use the Tommy Tippy ones, and you can honestly use whatever you want. I nursed my first daughter and bottle fed her for a while, so that's why I got these, because they were like more natural and helped her with nipple confusion. Now I exclusively pump for this child, so honestly any bottle will work. It doesn't really matter what you get if you're exclusively pumping, but if you want to do some research into glass bottles or more natural nipples or whatever, you definitely can. I just use the Tommy Tippy ones. What I really like about them is that they are shorter, so they just fit in bags easier. Next thing is milk storage bags, and I really like the Lancino brand. I used hundreds of these because I have a massive freezer stash that I stored a lot of milk in. Now, if you are the kind of mom that just produces just enough for your baby, or even a little less or even a little more, you may not always need these depending on how much you pump a day, but it is nice to just have them on handy because sometimes you may get a little extra milk and you might want to have some in your freezer. You definitely don't need to create a freezer stash. You don't need to have an oversupply, but in case you do, which is often the case with exclusively pumping, not always, but I just noticed that a lot more people that I know that exclusively pump have a little bit more of an oversupply because they are very consistent with extracting the same amount of milk every time, which babies may not always do. And even when you're out and about, let's say you have to pump and your baby's not fully done with their bottle, it's nice to just have these so that you can put the milk in something clean while you wait to get home and then use that milk. Bottle, soap, and a brush to clean. I literally, you guys, use a toothbrush. That is what I use to clean the bottles, the pump parts, everything. everything. And then I have some Dapple bottle baby soap. Again, all of this supplies can be found in my video where I extensively talk about everything that I use, but I'm just trying to briefly run through them right now. Just something to clean your baby's bottle on the go, in the morning, at night. I actually kept a whole station in my bathroom, in my bedroom, so that way I didn't have to go to the kitchen to clean my pump hearts and bottles. So just have something like that on hand, because I use a dishwasher a lot to clean my bottles, but sometimes you need to clean your pump hearts really fast. You don't have time to throw them in the dishwasher, so it's good to have that. And then I recommend having a mason jar just in case you have extra milk that you want to bottle up later or bag up later. It's just nice to have something clean and glass to hold your milk in the fridge. And then pumping bra, obviously I highly recommend a pumping bra if you are exclusively pumping, because it's just going to be easier to keep those pump hearts in place when you're doing it so much, and to be a little bit more hands-free with your kids. And then the last thing is just nursing pads for, obviously, when you're breastfeeding, regardless of whether you nurse or pump. It's just nice to have nursing pads to catch that extra milk in your bra so it doesn't soak through. So those are just a few of the quick essentials that I can just run through in my head. Again, watch my video with all of my supplies for exclusively pumping, because that video is really useful for a first-time mom. Now that we've gotten into the supplies, we know we need a pump, we got our milk storage bags, our bottles, everything like that. Let's jump into how to actually use the breast pump. What I'm about to show you, you can figure out because every single pump kind of has the same idea to it. So the first thing that I do is I will turn on my pump and I will click the letdown mode. On the Spectra, it is just these little wavy 3 lines. So I click that and you can see it just starts to suck faster, which mimics a baby when they're first getting your milk out. They typically suck fast because they're hungry, and therefore it stimulates a letdown. So I will do this letdown mode for about a minute. The cycle is at 70 and the vacuum is at 3. Once it has been a minute, I will click the letdown mode again, and it automatically switches into regular, slower, like a baby would after they get that initial letdown. And the cycle is 46, the vacuum is at 4, and I pump like this for a few minutes, and then I switch it to 5 and finish my pumping session. So the reason I recommend doing it like this is just because you want to mimic the baby as much as possible with your pump. But that is kind of the modes that I do, and like I said, it's just to mimic a baby, the natural way they would eat, and to mimic that in your body. To be honest with you guys, with my first daughter, I didn't know anything about letdown mode and changing the cycles and the vacuums, whatever. I literally would just turn on my pump and just start pumping. Figure out what is comfortable for you. Never pump if it's too painful. People think that a stronger suction equals more milk expression. Not necessarily. And you just want to be comfortable. So I never go above a 5 just because I'm comfortable at 5 and it empties me out just fine. So don't feel like you need to go higher with the suction to get more milk out, because that is definitely a myth. Definitely find your comfort zone while still being able to bring it out fast enough. A lot of this with pumping is just you're going to have to figure out what your body does and how the pump works best with you. Typically, like I said, a pump has an on button. It has a cycle, which I believe cycles is how many pulls per minute there is. And so you can turn it up for it to be faster and turn it down for it to be just slower. Vacuum has an up for higher suction, a negative sign for lower suction. And then this on the Spectra pump is kind of nice. It's just a light button. It just turns on the light like that. That's just basically how a pump works. And it's really simple. It's not that hard to figure out. You can always look up the exact pump you have on YouTube and find a tutorial on how to use it. As far as for how long to pump, so I typically empty out within 15 to 20 minutes. During the day, I would wake up and typically have to pump for like 30 minutes in the morning just because I had more milk from overnight. But my pumping sessions were literally 15 to 20 minutes. Now, everybody is different, so you might have a longer pumping time for yourself or a shorter time. What I would recommend though is to make sure you are fully empty. And again, this is just going to take experimentation. There is not just like a one size guide for everybody, and that's what pumping is all about. You have to figure out what your body does. And so some women can empty out super fast within 15 minutes and be done, have multiple letdowns during that time. By the way, guys, if you don't know what a letdown is, it's basically when your body gets the signal that it needs to let milk down. It will kind of be different for everybody. I feel like a little pricking sensation. It's like a little painful prick, and then the milk starts to flow. For some women, they don't feel much, and then they just kind of see the milk flowing. But essentially, what triggers a letdown is just stimulation. So sometimes I'll be pumping for 10 minutes, and then I'll be pumping, and for 2 minutes straight, nothing comes out. But I just keep going because I know that I will get another letdown. And typically, a letdown will just happen randomly around 10-15 minutes into my pumping session, and more milk will come out. You can have multiple letdowns within one pumping session. And what you want to do is get out all that milk. To have a good supply, you need to effectively empty out every single time. And so what will typically happen is that foremilk comes out first, which is more watery, and in the back is that fatty hind milk that may take a little extra time to get released and start flowing through. So always pump until empty. And so for you, when you're just starting out with pumping and you don't know how long you need to, always err on the longer side to see how long does this actually take. So for me, I started out being able to empty out in 10 minutes, and then slowly I realized, like, no, my body needs more time on the pump, and I eventually got to 15 to 20 minutes to fully empty out. And I would stop once I've had multiple letdowns and once I'm sure no milk is coming out and it's been a while. So just trying to kind of figure it out. Everybody is different, like I said. You just want to wait to see how many letdowns your body typically has and go based off of that. For some people, that's 30 minutes long. For some people, that's 15. It depends on your body. Just experiment and see. Let's get into pumping schedules. So again, this is going to be different for everybody depending on your goals. For me, one of my top goals was to pump as much milk as I possibly could. I was a massive oversupplier. I produce about 70 ounces a day, which is not normal, but I did that to myself because I really wanted to have an oversupply to fill up my freezer. Not everybody can have an oversupply, even if they try really hard, and not everybody wants an oversupply. Definitely don't need to have one. So what I'm going to recommend for this is that for the first 2 to 3 months, try to stick to a 2 to 3 hour pumping schedule. Now, this might be very difficult for you depending on your lifestyle, your work schedules, or how many kids you have, or what you're able to do, at least to match your newborn's feeding schedule. So this is really important because consistency is king when pumping and establishing that good milk supply. If you want to have a good established milk supply, it typically takes 8 to 12 weeks to establish that. And so you really want to make sure that for those 8 to 12 weeks, you are really sticking to a consistent pumping schedule. And so what I did was I pumped every 2 hours for the first 3 months of his life. Depending on what your goals are is how you're going to structure your pumping schedule. As a general rule of thumb, while your baby is still under 4 months old, it's good to have 7 to 8 pumping sessions throughout the day. And it's not like you can just pump once in the morning, go 6 hours without pumping, and then pump every hour after. To make more milk, your body needs to have that milk removed consistently. And so you really want to be consistent. That is the key to having a good milk supply. I would wake up in the morning, pump from 7 to 7:30, and then after 7:30, I'd set a reminder to pump at 9:30. So whatever time you finish your pumping session is when you want to start the timer. So let's say you finish at 9:15, you're gonna want to pump at 11:15. Let's say you start your pump at 11:15 and end at 11:30, you're gonna wanna pump at 1:30, 2 hours from that time, or 3 hours or 4. So I did drop the night pumps around 3 months postpartum just because my baby was starting to sleep through the night and I didn't want to wake up anymore. It took a while because it was really uncomfortable to go that first 10, 12 hours without pumping at all. But I just slowly got my body used to it by waking up in the middle of the night and just taking the edge off and then going back to get bed, not fully emptying. And then my body got the memo like, hey, she doesn't need this middle of the night pump anymore. So I was able to make that whole through the night without getting engorged and in pain. If you guys want to make it really simple for yourself, just match up your baby's feeding times. Whenever they feed, pump then, and that's also a really simple way. And you no longer have to keep track of it on your phone because you're always pumping when your baby feeds. So people often wonder when they should start pumping. Now, if you know you're going to exclusively be pumping for your baby, start as soon as you can. Start right away when your baby is born. If you're trying to do nursing and pumping, I would consult your lactation consultant and see when to start that. Now let's talk about milk storage. So I'm going to just be giving you guys a quick little guide. I think it's the CDC or I think it's the CDC guidelines. So currently what they say is that you can keep freshly pumped breast milk in the room temperature for about 4 hours before having to refrigerate it. You can keep it in the fridge for 4 days, in the freezer for 6 months, and in a deep chest freezer for 1 year. So that's just a quick little guide for you. Now what I do is I go off how the milk smells. If it smells bad, I'm throwing it out. It should smell like nothing. As you can see, my baby did not finish his bottle and he's napping right now. I am never going to throw out this breast milk. I'm just gonna put it back in the fridge and feed it to him at his next feeding. Some people are really weird about not giving their kid any breast milk that they've touched or not finished or throw away. I rarely throw away breast milk, you guys, because I'm not about to waste it, okay? If his saliva has come in contact with this milk, which it has, it is not bacteria filled and bad. I just stick it back in the fridge and give it to him for his next time. Always go off how it smells. Another thing people say is never mix breast milk temperatures. Again, CDC guidelines say not to, so definitely follow what your pediatrician says, what you feel comfortable with. I have always mixed breast milk temperatures. I've had cold milk in the fridge and warm, freshly pumped milk. I always mix them, froze them. Nothing bad has ever happened. My baby never had any major health issues. But again, always just go off what you feel comfortable with. If I know I'm gonna leave the house for just an hour, I'm typically just gonna throw the bottle in the car with me. If I know I'm gonna leave for several hours, I'll take a cooler with ice packs to keep it cold. But that's just basically how to store your milk. Don't make a huge deal out of it. I feel like it's not as complicated as people make it out to be. Don't finish a bottle, put it back in the fridge, just keep it cold. To slow down that bacteria growth. I usually bag my milk up every day and put it in the freezer that day, so I never had milk just sitting in the fridge for days and days. I always like to stay 1 bottle ahead of my baby's needs. So that means when I pump, I will fill up his next bottle, so he always kind of has 2 going on in the fridge at the same time, and then put that extra milk in a milk storage bag, and then once that milk storage bag is full, throw it in the freezer. Another thing you can do is the pitcher method, which is basically just filling up a pitcher or a mason jar with all the milk you pump that day, and then dividing it in bottles that night, and then the next day those are the bottles you feed your kid, and then again every bottle that you pump you just pour it again into the pitcher. That's the pitcher method. I never did that. I just would always just fill up his next bottle with that immediately pumped milk and put the rest in a storage bag until that was full, put it in the freezer. So again, up to you how you want to do it. There's multiple ways, but basically just always staying ahead of your baby by 1 bottle. That way they always have food and you don't have a screaming baby and you're pumping trying to get that immediate milk for your baby. One thing I do recommend with milk storage is always freezing your milk in the same increments of ounces each time. Always consistently fill up your milk bags to the same amount. And the reason I say this is because when you have a freezer stash, you want to know how much you have in the freezer. It's going to be a lot more easy to calculate it when you have the milk always at the same one. So I always fill mine up to 8 ounces. The bag says only 6. I fill mine up to 8 ounces every single time. And so I know every single bag in there is 8 ounces. I don't have to sit and read the bag. I don't label it. I just put the date on the bag and throw it in the freezer. So that's what I recommend doing, just because it'll make it a lot easier if all of your bags have the same amount of milk in it. When you have to calculate them, it's just gonna be more simple. Now I'm going to talk about how to keep up a good supply. So like I said, being consistent is the key. It is the key. You have to stick to your pumping schedule, whatever that is, whether that's every 2 hours, every 3, every 4, whatever you decide, stick to that pumping schedule. Do not deter from it, because inconsistency is the killer of milk supply. Moms that stay consistent still sometimes have problems with milk supply. So as much as you can, stay consistent. I always knew that, like, okay, if I have to leave the house and pump in an hour, I'm gonna pump before I leave the house. Like, I'd rather pump before I have to rather than go too long without pumping, if that makes sense. Another thing that I want to mention with keeping up your milk supply is middle of the night pumps are essential for at least the first 3 months of their life. Now, I know women who drop them really early at 6 weeks postpartum, 8 weeks postpartum, and what ends up happening is your body is gonna get the message that you don't need that extra milk, and it's gonna stop producing that, which in turn, in the long run, affects your main supply as well. When your milk supply is established, which is really hard because it's different for everyone and you don't necessarily know when it is, okay to drop the middle of the night pump, because then your body already knows, okay, this is about how many ounces I need to be producing a day, and it's going to stay consistent even with that dropped pump. So I was able to drop my middle of the night pump around 3 months postpartum, and my milk supply never dipped at all, because basically all the milk that I didn't pump at night was just sitting there in the morning for me to get out, and it was just a longer morning pumping session. This is going to really help establish a good, strong milk supply, and then you can drop it when you're sure that you have a good established supply. So what I kind of did was, in the beginning, my newborn would wake up twice a night, and every time he woke up, I would pump and bottle feed him in the middle of the night because I was up anyways. And then after he started sleeping through the night at 2 months, I would wake up once in the middle of the night to just pump once and empty out and go back to bed. And then when I was ready to drop that pump at 3 months postpartum, what I did was I would wake up for that pump and just pump halfway. I wouldn't fully empty out. And eventually, after doing that for a few nights, my body got the memo and I was able to go through the whole night without a ton of pain. The other thing is just to eat a lot of calories, eat lots of fats and protein. And honestly, the biggest thing for me personally is just keeping up with my calorie intake. I notice a huge difference when I eat a lot of food and stick with that rather than when I don't. I also drink electrolytes every single day. I use the brand LMNT. I use Relight Redmond. I just drink electrolytes every single day. Again, I was producing 70 ounces a day. That's a lot of milk, so I had to keep up on my calories, had to keep up on my fluids, but electrolytes definitely helped keep me up with all the nourishing nutrients I needed. Now we're going to talk about on the go. Again, I have a whole video on how to pump on the go, all my tips and tricks with that. I talk about road travel, road trips, airplane trips, in the town for a few hours. So please go watch that video if you want to see more in depth. But really briefly in this video, basically always make sure you take your pump with you, put it in a bag with a Ziploc bag for your pump parts, and take some extra milk storage bags, take your baby bottles, take a little cooler with ice packs to keep your milk cold. Try to pump when you are either driving, if you can hook up your pump and just manage driving, or try to pump in parking lots. Bring a nursing cover with you. Pumping on the go does not need to be complicated. It can be pretty simple if you just get into a routine, and the more you do it, the more used to it you will get. I remember being so uncomfortable when I first started, but it just progressively got easier. Make sure you have a bag with all of your supplies and Ziploc bags for your wet pump parts. When it comes to cleaning your pump parts, you can do it with wipes, which is what I did for a long time. I just literally wiped every single pump part clean, or take them to a restroom and carefully rinse them out. Make sure not to get anything touching them. When I'm out and about, I do not bother with sterilizing. I don't bother with soaps and things like that. I just rinse them out and then worry about cleaning them when I get home. Sometimes I will even pump 2 times out in public and never use soap for it. I just kind of rinse them out, and then next time I have to pump again, rinse them out, and then worry about it at home. Just to make it easier for myself, always make sure you have a cooler with you with ice to keep your milk cold, especially if it's summertime. And the last thing concerning pumping I'm going to talk about is your freezer stash. If you are pumping just enough to feed your baby, or even a little less, that is awesome and great. You won't even need to worry about this. But if you do have an oversupply or want to have an oversupply, a few things to know about your freezer stash. So like I mentioned with the milk storage, your milk can stay frozen in a regular house freezer for 6 months, and then in a deep chest freezer for 1 year. Those are just the guidelines that CDC recommends so that your milk doesn't lose its nutrients for being frozen too long. Always make sure to bag your milk in the same amount of ounces each time, because when it comes time for you to wean and you need to calculate how much milk you have to know when to wean off the pump, then it's just useful to have all those ounces the same. And so I actually recently weaned because I did the math and I was able to feed him from my freezer for up to 6 months. When it comes to the calculations, you're just going to say, okay, this is how much my baby eats in a day. I'm going to calculate for a little more in case he has growth spurts, and then this is how many ounces he'll eat in a month, in 6 months, whatever. This is how much milk I have in my bags, times that by the amount of bags you have, and then kind of try and see how many ounces you have in the freezer versus how many he'll need to eat. And that's when you'll know when you can wean, is when you do all that math. And so maybe I can make a separate video on the whole freezer situation, how to de-thaw milk and use it with your baby, whatever. When I would put milk in my deep freezer, I would always write it down on a piece of paper how much milk I put in there on the day. So I'd write, okay, I put 6 bags of milk on February 2nd. And so I would be able to know, okay, each bag is 8 ounces. So 6 times 8, that's how many ounces I have. This is the day. And at the end of the month, I would add everything up to know exactly how many bags I put into my deep chest freezer. When de-thawing milk, anytime you de-thaw breast milk from the freezer, do it in a bowl of hot water. Wait till it's completely de-thawed, And never refreeze thawed milk, okay? If you de-thaw it, do not refreeze it. Do not warm it up in the microwave. Always warm it up using a hot bowl of water so you don't burn or scald your baby with the microwaved milk, because what can happen is it can just heat up certain parts and then keep other parts cold, and then it's just uneven. It can burn your baby. So make sure you always just de-thaw milk in a bowl of hot water. Do not put your bottles in the microwave. It's not only super bad to be heating up your milk in plastic, but also, like I said, it can scald your baby by only heating up certain parts really hot and then other parts of the bottle are really cold. So never do that. Always just warm your milk up in a bowl of hot water, in a bag or a bottle. And then also, when it comes to how you feed your baby the milk, I always gave my baby a cold bottle from the fridge. He never knows warm milk unless I freshly pumped it and gave it to him, which happened a few times. My baby just is used to doing that. My baby doesn't care if he has a cold bottle because that's what we got him used to. I know some people like to warm up their bottles using a bottle warmer. Whatever works for you. We never did. We just give our baby a bottle from the fridge. That is my guide on how to breast pump milk. These are just a couple little topics I was able to cover. I want to see way more content, way more information stuffed into it. I have a lot of videos on my channel that you guys can go to and reference. This is just kind of a quick go-to guide on how to pump breast milk, getting you started in the process, and hopefully was able to be helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.